The Cubs take one from the Cardinals finally and go for the series split tomorrow with Shota Imanaga returning to the mound. Let's talk some deadline rumors. Yes, a common topic on this podcast that always has new developments. Today on the Cubs Daily Podcast. Big win for the Cubs. Matthew Boyd plays stopper. The offense goes off. Happ, McGuire, and Tucker all with home runs in the first 3 innings. But the topic of the day is the continual rumors around the Cubs' potential deadline moves. Bruce Levine confirming a Ken Rosenthal report that the Cubs have inquired about Mitch Keller and David Bednar with the Pirates. There's also some rumors flowing out about Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera with the Marlins. So before I dive into some thoughts on ESPN's piece ranking the top free agents and their fits, on which there was a lot of players linked to the Cubs, let's listen to a chunk of Bruce Levine from our pregame show on Wednesday, talking with Cliff Floyd and Elise Menaker.
They need reliable 6-inning pitchers, and that right now that doesn't sound like much, but it's a big deal when you're getting 4. I mean, over the last 7 starts, they haven't had anybody go over 5 1/3. So, and only a few of them have been even 5. So that reliability has got to be there,
Yeah.
I mean, these guys.
That's why you're looking at Mitch Keller, you're saying, for this conversation?
Right. And I'm not demeaning, Cliff, I'm not demeaning any of the Cub pitchers, but they're not 1s and 2s. The Cub pitchers are 3, 4s, and 5s, okay? That's when it warms up and the bats start coming out, that's what happens with fly ball pitchers.
Yeah, I'm with you. Listen, I believe Colin Ray gave you everything in the kitchen sink, right? He gave you 12 starts. Some were really good, some were okay. But regardless of how you feel about the starts, he gave them to you, right? He was out there. You missed Shota for 7 weeks. You don't have Justin Steele. So I'm with you on this list right here. I'm all in on Sandy Alcantara. And the only reason I'm all in on him is I know he's recovering, but he's actually going this way. Mitch Keller, I'm confused with. Right? He shouldn't be that bad. I know the offense is not good. We talk about it with Paul Skeens all the time. I just believe what we've seen from Mitch Keller in the past before he got his extension was a guy that was really out there balling, right. Giving you that quality that you're talking about, 6, 7 innings strong. Right now, I don't know if he's complacent with the fact that he got the extension or whatever the case may be. It just doesn't look good when you look at the numbers.
So, Elise, do you give up really 2 good young players for a guy that's a 3 or a 4, or do you wait for Alcantara, give the big package, and know that you're going to get a guy that can deal and take you to the World Series?
I mean, I think right now everything's on the table. That's partly why you have all these prospects in the minor leagues, because you want to use them at this point as currency, which we actually haven't seen a ton of. Yeah. And a lot of these guys, there's not even spots for them as they move their way up into the big league. So to me, this seems like the perfect time. If you're going, you can't get too attached to any of these guys, unfortunately, because
if I said the names Brown and Horton, what would you say then?
Not those 2.
Oh, okay. So this is
Horton in particular. I'm thinking right now. Why would you need Horton?
Trade.
So why would that name
they would
be
want
out there?
They would want Horton or
but then
Brown.
That's maybe not
one or the other, right?
Happening.
So I would say this real quick. I always go to, if you're the Houston Astros and you went and got Justin Verlander, that's your Sandy Alcantara, right? To me, when you think about what he can do as far as the stuff. If you look what he did against the Braves his last start, that's Sandy, right? That's him bouncing back and starting to feel good about, where he's at.
It's been a long while.
It's been a long while,
right? So you have to go through the bumps to get back to where you were. I'm just saying, when Justin won for Houston, he didn't lose a game. He left a bad environment in Detroit. Right. And then he went this way and said, wait a minute, this is amazing. Nothing against the Marlins or anybody. They got 5,000, 10,000 fans.
Right.
You pitching in Wrigley on a Tuesday, 120 with 40. That changed the whole landscape.
You got him this year, next year, and a possible option year. So with all that in mind, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt when you give up a player. It's not going to be, just take the guys we don't want.
No.
It's not going to be like that. You're going to hurt to get a Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah, but I think they're also almost set up to hurt, if you will, because there are guys that you have that, look, in order to get stuff, you got to give stuff up. And so that's the position they're going to be in, and that's what you're looking at right now. So is anyone off the table? I don't think anyone.
I don't think so.
Yeah, right. Especially when you're talking about the prospects in the minor leagues.
If you're going for Alcantara, you're going to try to win the World Series, okay?
Yeah, isn't that what we're talking about?
We'll apologize to you all later. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think there needs to be apologies. Isn't that the point of this season?
No, but it might hurt you. I mean, you might say, oh, boy, this was a Jeff Bagwell trade, or this was a John Smoltz trade, where they become Hall of Famers. You never even heard of the young guys before. So you worry about that, but at the same time, your goal and your mission is to win right now.
Apologies for the small audio hit there. I think that was Cliff Floyd's very expensive blazer rubbing up against the microphone. But besides the point here, I talked a couple days ago about the options available at the deadline for the Cubs to go after on the pitching side of things. Fun podcast. Jump back to Monday's show to listen to that. Baseline look at the options available. Cliff gave his thoughts on that as well. And now we have Kylie McDaniel and Jeff Passan of ESPN putting together some great work, ranking the top 50 free agents available and putting about a handful of team fits at the end of the top 20 or so on those names. And the Cubs, on the top 8 options presented, were listed under 6 of those names, more than any other team, a signal that, yes, they are likely some of the strongest buyers in this market, which is leaning towards being a bit more of a seller's market. So an interesting angle from that perspective as to who exactly the Cubs end up picking that they decide to acquire. And also no surprise that the majority of the top free agent options that the Cubs were associated with were starting pitchers. The Cubs obviously need some names to fit alongside that, as Bruce mentioned in our pregame show that I just showed. This is also something that Jed Hoyer has mentioned as well, the need for starting pitching. But anyways, those top 8 options presented by ESPN are Alex Bregman, Jarren Duran from the Red Sox, Sandy Alcantara, Freddie Peralta, Eugenio Suarez, Seth Lugo, Zach Gallen, and Merrill Kelly. The Cubs mentioned on all of those names, apart from Freddie Peralta, likely because it's in division, and Jarren Duran because he is not an outfielder. Bregman and Suarez, the third base options there, are kind of the interesting ones. Listen, I think Matt Shaw is a very good prospect. He's young. I've been impressed with the adaptations at third base from a defensive standpoint. But I'd say I'm a bit surprised at the profile of bat that he's showing in Major League Baseball. I think the prospect evaluation here when he was in the minors was that he had some pop. It's not really above average bat speed, but this was supposed to be like a league average slug, doubles guy, above average batting average, stumble into 20 homers at his peak, etc. Complete hitter is a way to phrase it. And I'm not going to give up on Shaw in any respect. I don't think anybody is. But in terms of the short-term future of the Cubs, we've now seen in 2 separate samples of MLB play that he's been a below average major league bat. I think one of the main things that jumps out to me watching him is how inside out his swing is. He's pulling just 18% of his fly balls. The league average is somewhere around 30% or so. Some of the best guys on that list are actually Pete Armstrong and Cal Raleigh, who are absolutely mashing. They're pulling nearly 50% of their fly balls. So you can see the separation in that respect from a getting to power standpoint. Now, the simple thing here is just that slug on pulled fly balls is like 1,600. Yeah, 1,600 slug. And it's just over 500 to center field and even lower to the opposite field. So you see the deviation there. Now, as a data guy, I'm obviously going to prefer the pulled fly balls because they're more productive, but I'm aware that not every hitter needs to pull the ball a ton like this. There are occasionally successful hitters who are able to kind of inside out their approach and their swing and still be really productive. Freddie Freeman is probably the one that always comes to mind. Although he still pulls a pretty good amount of his fly balls, he's just also productive to the opposite field. Very steep swing, kind of a funky swing overall. And he's also a left-handed hitter, which I think adds a bit of oddity to his profile overall. And this is the thing when it comes to Shaw when he was crushing last year in the minors. He was pulling fly balls around a league average rate. He was right around the 29% mark, and now he's way down to 18%. So the question to me, from a deadline perspective and thinking about the future of the 2025 Cubs, who you hope can make a postseason run, is whether the Cubs believe they have their playoff third baseman on their roster currently. I think my answer to that right now is yes, but things could change in a month, and I think some of the options there, particularly on Eugenio Suarez, if the D-backs decide to sell, won't be determined until later in August. Later in July, at which time you will have an understanding of maybe how Shaw has adapted over the next month and how you project him going forward. So that is something that I think could swing this deadline in a variety of directions for the Cubs. We know they're probably adding some kind of starting pitching. I'd be surprised if they don't add some kind of reliever, but the wild card here is figuring out third base specifically. The bench is also a spot that I think they'll probably add a piece or two to. But third base, again, that's the note to watch going forward. Let's really hone in on Shaw's development over the next month or so and see what the Cubs end up doing, because they will tell you what they think of Matt Shaw in the short term, at least, by whether they acquire some talent at the deadline. So that's something I'm watching. Shota Imanaga tomorrow He's back. Very excited for this, as Ian Happ said on 670 to Score the other day. It's kind of like a deadline acquisition. To some extent, I agree with that. But guess what? You still got to make other deadline acquisitions, and we're excited to see what those are for the Chicago Cubs in 2025. We'll see you then. Take care.